Grace and peace. Welcome to Judah's Roar Domestic Violence Awareness Initiative YouTube channel. I am your host, Apostle Cheryl L. Richardson. Today's topic is he or she a deadly abuser? Is he or she a deadly abuser? Now take a few minutes to subscribe if you've not done so already. You can check down in the description box area, click that bell for notification after you subscribe, and you'll receive a notice every single time we upload our weekly premiere video. So today's topic is he or she a deadly abuser? Now, we know that men can be victims of domestic violence as well as women. And so we want our audience to be clear that we are aware of that. And when we refer to an abuser, it can be male or female. Let me share some statistics with you. Almost half of all women and men in the US have experienced psychological aggression by an intimate partner in their lifetime. That's 48.4% of women and 48.8% of men. Most female victims of intimate partner violence were previously victimized by the same offender at rates of 77% for ages 18 to 24, 76% for ages 25 through 34, and 81% for ages 35 through 49. Now, according to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, the presence of a firearm in the home, in the residence, increases the risk of homicide by 500%. 19% of domestic violence involves a weapon. And only 34% of people who are injured by intimate partner violence or domestic violence receive medical attention for their injuries. Well, why is that? Because many of them don't seek medical attention. 72% of murder-suicides involve an intimate partner. 72%. 94% of the victims of these murder-suicides are female. So 100% of them are not female, which lets us know that there is a percentage of murder-suicides in which the perpetrator is the woman. Now, today we're going to take a quick look at, is he or she a deadly abuser? Domestic violence is wrong in all of its forms, whether it's verbal abuse, financial abuse, psychological abuse, the ongoing use of coercive control tactics, gaslighting. It's all damaging, it's all traumatizing. But we're talking about a deadly abuser. Now, why is this important? This is important so that we can gauge properly what type of danger a victim is in, and so that the victim himself or herself is able to identify. So opinions vary. You know, there are many advocates out there like myself. There are many, specialists out there. You've got law enforcement out there. There are many people who interact with domestic violence cases on an ongoing basis. And so opinions may vary even among clinicians, therapists like myself, advocates like myself. And so we may have varying opinions about this, but this is the purpose of this video, is just to give you an idea of what some of the indicators are. Some of the things that are strong indicators that someone may very well die. Now, keep in mind that in any domestic violence relationship, things can escalate to a place because that's the nature of the beast. Things can escalate to a place where a murder takes place or a murder-suicide takes place, okay? It's important to remember also that as much as we want to be a resource and not a roadblock, and as much as we want to help and we don't want to interfere and we don't want to be perceived as busybodies often, it's important to remember that faulty guidance may very well lead to death for the victim that listens to it, no matter how well intentioned it is. Why am I talking about that? Because oftentimes, especially among people of faith, the advice that is given is based on misappropriated scripture. It's based on that person's individual understanding of what abuse is and what it is not. Oftentimes, people who give advice are embracing myths, which then affect the quality of the advice that they give. And so, when a person is ensnared, when they're trapped in a domestic violence riddled relationship, it is imperative that the advice that they receive is sound advice, that it's well thought out advice, that it's seasoned advice, and not based on myth, not based on misappropriated scripture, not based on a over exaggerated sense of responsibility for holding a relationship together single-handedly. It's important because lives depend on it. The lives of the victim, the lives of any children, the lives of the support system of the victim. So the quality of the advice that we give is important. And this is why it's also imperative that we refer when we are in over our head, when we just don't know what to say, when we don't know how to help a victim. The best way we can help them is to connect them with a resource that is skilled in navigating domestic violence issues. The most important thing is the safety of the victim. That's the most important thing. Okay? So let's remember that no matter how well-intentioned we are, if the advice that we give is not good advice, if it doesn't take into account safety, the psychological safety, the emotional safety, the physical safety of the victim, then you can very well be contributing to their death and to their demise. All right. The American Journal of Public Health released a study in 2003. And I thought that this study was incredibly interesting. It identifies the following factors that should be considered strong predictors that the abuser is a lethal abuser, or a deadly abuser, or a murderous abuser, a destructive abuser. Okay? So these are indicators that the potential is alive and well in that situation. Does the abuser have access to firearms? Now, I just shared a few minutes ago that the presence of a firearm in the residence increases the likelihood of a domestic violence homicide by 500%, not 5%, 500%. It is just about guaranteed that someone's going to die as a result of gun violence if there is a firearm in the home. And let me just take an aside here. There's a recent case where a man killed himself and his two little boys. One was 3 years old and one was 4 years old. His family was shocked and devastated. And this is what they said. He had a history of mental health issues. He had a history of depression, but he would never harm his children. This is what the police were told after this man and his two little boys were reported missing because no one had heard from them for a few days. Oh, he would never harm his children. Let me be clear. Someone in that frame of mind will often do what you cannot imagine they would ever do. Okay, so it's not wise to assume that someone who is abusive will not extend that abuse to others outside of the victim. 20% of domestic violence homicides are not even the victim. 20% of domestic violence homicides are neighbors, first responders, innocent bystanders, anyone that the abuser perceives is a support to the victim. Okay? So the first thing we have to do is abandon our preconceived notion about who will harm others and who will not. Because a person who is operating in an abusive mindset and spiraling out of control is fully capable of crashing every boundary that you and I believe that they respect on a day-to-day basis. Okay? So here are the factors that are listed as strong predictors. Does he or she have access to firearms? We just talked about that and how critically important that is. Now, One could say, well, if you take the firearm out of the house, that doesn't mean he can't just go get another one. Well, that's true. He can go get another one, but that's what he will have to do, go get another one. In that moment, death by firearm is not possible if there's no weapon in the home. Okay. Another predictor, another strong predictor is, has he made threats, or she, have they made threats of deadly violence toward their partner? And I would add, or to themselves, have they threatened suicide? Have they contemplated, verbalized suicide? Have they contemplated, verbalized murdering their partner, the children, the family pet, a relative, their parents, the pastor, the counselor who advised you to consider separation? Okay, so if they have ever said, I'm going to kill you, or I'm going to kill myself, or keep playing, I'm going to kill that dog, tell your parents to butt out before something bad happens to them. Okay, that is uttering a lethal threat. That's a threat that should be taken seriously. That's a threat that should be taken seriously, even if you're tempted to believe, oh, they were just upset, they didn't mean it. They said it. So a great boundary was crashed when they uttered those words. Take them seriously. Okay. Is he or she unemployed? Are they unemployed? Why is that important? Because they've got all this time on their hands. They have no sense of purpose, no sense of direction. Okay. And for most people, you derive some degree of pride from the way you perform your job on a day-to-day basis. You are proud that you have a job, right? And so if you don't have that, that's a huge part of your identity that's just missing. That's just void. Now, let me insert another little piece of information here. Did you know that if a woman brings home more than 65% of the family income, that she is at greater risk of becoming a domestic violence abuse victim? If she makes 65%, it puts her in harm's way if she has the wrong partner. All right. Does he or she use illicit drugs? Or do they abuse their prescription drugs? Do they have a substance abuse issue or problem? Are they a full-blown alcoholic or drug addict? Okay. And so when these factors are present, it increases the likelihood that violence can take place. It increases the likelihood that the potential for them to be a lethal abuser is present. Here's the key thing. Is the relationship shattering? Are they in the process of separating? Are they in the process of separating? Has the partner that has been victimized recently moved out? Because if that's the case, in 30 to 90 days post-exit, the victim is in increased danger. 30 to 90 days. It is mind-blowing how often you hear about domestic violence cases in which the victim has been murdered and they had a restraining order, or they separated from the abuser. They finally gathered the courage to leave, and then they were murdered. And it's shocking how often it happens within 30 to 90 days. So that's a time frame that you want to keep in mind and be sensitive to. Here's another indicator. Does he or she try to control all of the daily activities, every hour of the day, day and night, day and night? Obsessive focus on how their partner's time is spent. So we've just discussed a few indicators that would let us know that there's this very strong possibility, a likelihood that the relationship could turn lethal and that someone, if not everyone, could lose their life. Purpose in your heart to be a resource and not a roadblock. And how can you do that? Educate yourself. Subscribe to our channel. Subscribe to other channels. Learn everything that you can about domestic violence and how it presents and what it looks like. Do a introspection and try to figure out, try to understand how can I help someone around me who may be experiencing this. The more educated you are about this topic, the better resource you can be for those that you care about and those that you interact with on a day-to-day basis. This is Apostle Cheryl L. Richardson with Judah's Roar Domestic Violence Awareness Initiative. Please know that we have a private faith-based group on Facebook. It's called Dominion Over Domestic Violence. If you feel that belonging to a group that is based on faith and hope and growth on the other side of domestic violence, or as you're transitioning out of domestic violence, then by all means, send us a request to join. We keep the group small on purpose so that we can best ensure the safety of those and the privacy of those that are in the group. Ministry leaders are welcome. Current victims are welcome. Past victims are welcome. Again, this is Apostle Cheryl Richardson with Judah's Roar Domestic Violence Awareness Initiative. We are committed to igniting hearts, inspiring minds, and safeguarding destinies. Blessings to you.